just walk. I don't mind.
Althea, welcome to the Layered Onion. Maybe you could introduce yourself and tell our viewers and listeners a little bit more about yourself and all your artistic ventures.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Althea Renee Miller. I like to say my whole name because it has so much power and meaning. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I am a multi-genre artist. So I am a dancer, singer, songwriter, painter. I draw. I love to decorate. I love to cook, poetry and spoken word. Everything that I do incorporates art. I breathe art. And I've been in Wisconsin for 17 years, graduated from UW Madison with a degree in psychology, and I'm a current master's student in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, studying multicultural education, and I'm just so glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask right away. So you are, you went from Los Angeles, large metropolitan and warm environment to now Wisconsin, and you're studying multiculturalism, and this is not the epitome of multiculturalism here. So tell me a bit why you're here and what makes you stay.
Well, long story long. When I was in high school thinking about where I wanted to go to college, of course, there are University of California schools all throughout California, and I was looking at UC Santa Barbara, UCLA, all of those schools, those top schools that people dream about going to. And I applied to all of them, but I got an opportunity to be in a selection process for the Posse program. And it's basically like a nationwide search for a group of people who get selected to get a scholarship and go to college together with this scholarship. And you have this cohort of people that you can depend on. So I went through that whole process. I was nominated by my AP US history teacher. I got to the final round, and I actually didn't make it into the program. And then my application went into general admission, and then I got into UW that way. And so my whole thought was, well, I think I need something different. Born and raised in Los Angeles, and just was always at the beach and always doing all of the glitzy and sometimes not so glamorous things. And I was comfortable, and I didn't want to be comfortable. And so I took a shot, and one way or another found myself here. And I stay here because there's much work to be done. There are a lot of disparities here. And I think that is what initially appealed to me, even though Madison is very much different from where I grew up, and just in so many ways, I think that I can fill a gap here.
And there is a gap.
Yes, huge.
So sometimes how does that feel, kind of forging a path in a place versus maybe having a posse? Or have you found your own posse?
I have. I found, and it's makeshift. I have like many little posses, and I'm really grateful for that experience and actually not getting into that program, because it really forced me to find myself in a way that maybe I would not have if I was in that group. And so I was able to spend a lot of time with First Wave, actually. So I was not in the First Wave program, the arts program at UW, but I was very much First Wave adjacent. They call it the second wave. And so I went to school with the first cohort and was able to hang out with them and fine tune my art and poetry and dance, and really be loved as part of that community, even though I wasn't in that program. So I had that artistic community, and then I found a church, first at Fountain of Life, and then at Mount Zion Baptist Church, where I still am, and have that faith community. But I also have my sorority sisters. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And so I was able to find all of these different areas that they overlap in a lot of ways. And it gives me this fullness of purpose here.
So let's talk a little bit. Were you always creative as a young person, or did you, pursue it as you were in college and you learned more genres?
I was always creative. And so a funny story is that I think my whole life has always pointed toward Wisconsin. And so how I started
That's
writing,
very interesting.
it is. But let me tell you. So how I started writing was that I saw a competition. There was an announcement for a competition in American Girl magazine. It was a poetry competition. And at the time, I was already drawing and I was already like writing letters. I would write letters to my mom. I would write letters to God. I was an avid reader. I have amazing handwriting. That's what a lot of people know me for. So I was like working on my penmanship and just reading this magazine. And I saw this ad for a poetry contest. And I'm not even sure that I actually submitted the poem to American Girl. But I started writing poetry and then just could not stop. And it wasn't until I moved here that I realized that American Girl is actually headquartered here. I was like, oh, wow, imagine that. And so I feel like this place has been calling to me from a very young age. I didn't even realize it.
So when you started writing that poetry, do you feel like you were releasing emotions or were you telling stories or what did you feel like was the real inspiration?
It was emotional, but it was also didactic. My first poem that I remember writing is called A Mind is a Terrible Thing to Waste. And some of it, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, especially if you have good taste. And just, doing all of that rhyming that kids like to do. And then at some point it was like, you meditate and you look in the sky and ideas fly by. Like, okay. And I'm like trying to put things together and like how to be good, kind, how to use your mind in brilliant ways. That's what I was thinking about. And I don't know why I was thinking about that so early, but that's what I was thinking about and that's what I was writing about. And I just couldn't stop after that.
Well, actually, that sounds really lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when did you turn into including dance or music? I mean, they're all sort of integrated. When you do poetry, it's often could be put into a song.
Mm-hmm. I started dancing in church. And so all of this kind of happened around the same time. But I was going to a church called Church of the Harvest, South Central LA, off of La Brea Avenue. Such fond memories. But it was a mega church. And we had a dance ministry there. And I remember our first time ministering or performing for the congregation. It was some kind of a revival or something like that. And the sanctuary was packed. And the song was 7 minutes long and it was jazzy. And I just had a good time with the costumes and just the meaning of the song. And that was my first foray into dancing. And then I just kept getting involved in other churches with the liturgical dance ministry. And I grew up in poverty. And so I did not have access to the Debbie Allen Academy that was like right in my back door. I could not do that. But I happened to have Ailey teachers, people who had danced with Alvin Ailey with me at all points. And they taught me my technique. They gave me everything that I needed to be a good dancer. So by the time I came to UW and started working in the dance department, taking electives, I had already had this atypical but very good foundation in movement. And then it was just taken to the next level.
What kind of style of dance do you like the best?
Well, liturgical dance is a lot of it's interpretive, it's emotional. And so in the traditional dance world, that's considered lyrical. So I love to blend all different types of dance styles to get my point across. But when I came to UW, I started working with Chris Walker in the dance department and learning dances of the diaspora, West African dance, Caribbean dance, and just being able to combine that with my experience in liturgical or lyrical dance has been really fascinating. So it kind of just depends on what the situation calls for, what type of dance I present. In general, it depends on what the situation calls for and what type of art I present. So I always wonder, like, hey, I have this idea or I have this feeling. Do I communicate that in a poem? Do I communicate that in a song? Do I communicate that in dance? Or do I do all of it? And do I paint it? And when does that happen? How does it all work together? It's always a negotiation.
Well, that's what happens when you're multi-talented, huh?
Thank you.
So I know you work with kids,
I do.
and do you use all modalities with the kids?
I do. Because I think it requires it, because kids are they're incredible, and adults don't give kids enough credit for their depth of feeling and depth of thought and just how they perceive things. And so being able to connect with kids in song or in dance or in drawing or making collages, whatever, I try to read the room and really connect with each child and see what it is they need. Everywhere I go, I work with kids. I cannot escape it. And I am okay with that. I really had a rough childhood. And what I am learning is that there is healing that happens as I work with kids. And there's a deep understanding, just because I went through so much. And when I see pain in a child's eyes, I feel like the little girl in me is, really connecting with the child in front of me. And so, sometimes they need to sing, and I'll sing with them. Sometimes they want to learn how to step. And so we're stepping. It just really depends on what the situation calls for. But of course, I will teach an art class if asked. And so I've done collage work with kids recently. I teach ballet at KLJ Movement, which is a local dance company. So I just have lots of opportunities to work with kids, and they bless me.
Kids are powerful.
They are.
They certainly are. I think they remind us both of what's important and teach us a lot along the way, for sure. So let me ask this. As you have worked with kids and you think about, as you said, a difficult upbringing, and what do you feel like you wish you knew then that you know now?
I wish I knew that it's okay to have all of these talents. I think at one point I thought it was weird. Like, why can't I just pick one and just like be good at this thing? Or why can't I just be like really into scripture and church and just do that? Why can't I just do psychology? Why can't I just do like all of these things? When I was a little kid, I would read my mom's medical books. So like I was just into everything all the time, and I just could not understand it. I did not realize that it was something that's okay to have these multiple interests and to be outside of the box or the circle or the star, whatever people try to put you in. So I would tell my younger self to just, it's okay. Like, you are interested in all of these things, and there is a place for you. You might have to build that place yourself, but there is a place.
So I know a lot of your work is around trauma. And do you thread that in when you're working with kids, or just, I guess, tell me a little bit more about that.
I operate on the basic understanding that everyone has some form of trauma. They deal with something, whether it's a one-time thing that happened that they're still dealing with, or whether it's chronic trauma. We all have something that causes us great distress, great pain, and we don't always know when that experience or that hurt, that harm comes back to mind. And so I think about how kids misbehave. Are they misbehaving, or are they communicating, hey, I'm hurting and I really need you to help me stop hurting? Adults, when they have these negative reactions to kids, what is it that the child is doing that's, causing them to react in that way? What kind of trauma is being triggered at that moment when, I don't know, a kid is in the classroom and they just refuse to stop talking, or a kid is like, throwing pins, or whatever the case may be, right? Like, I'm always thinking about what is going on with someone that causes them to have these reactions. How do they interact with the world? What does trauma really do to one's happiness? What does trauma do to how the careers that we select, just everything, the colors that we wear? And so I do explore that a lot because I think that there's an answer most of the time for everything that we do. And unfortunately, it is just rooted in that trauma.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of advice do you give to adults who are struggling with children that, as you say, need to speak out? What kind of advice do you give?
To take a breath, take a moment, because kids are going to push every button that can possibly be pushed. And that is their job, because their job is to explore and to learn and to test, hypothesize. And so kids are going to do that. And it's up to adults who hopefully have learned to regulate their emotions, adults who, in many of these situations, who have the power to control themselves and understand that not every kid who acts out is doing so with the intention of like harming them or undermining their power as an adult or teacher or what have you. So really take a beat and really see the situation for what it is. I often say that when there's a child who is acting out, look at the environment first. Is there something in the environment that is causing that behavior? Is it too hot, too cold? Is it too bright? What in the environment is causing that? Is there something within them in terms of, are they hungry? Are they sleepy? Do they have a disability? Right? Not blaming them, but looking at everything else before then getting to, okay, well, yes, there's something going on there. They are misbehaving, right? There are 1,000 answers before we get to the point of they're misbehaving. They need to be punished. Go there first before immediately jumping to conclusions.
So where did you learn your patience?
Oh,
I could use some.
I've had to work at it, but I did start my career in childcare and education with working with children with disabilities. That was my entree, and it was such a natural place for me to be, because what kid really wants to just sit still? What kid really wants to color inside the lines?
Right.
So being able to support those kids who had those extra needs and who needed someone to advocate for them, that is where I learned that patience. And that's where I learned that actually most of the time the problem is with the adults. The kids are just doing what they need to do to be their own authentic selves. And it's the adults who have learned to hide and to turn themselves down. They have become the problem. And my goal is to help to support the kids and to advocate for the kids, but also to help the adults heal too.
Actually, the next issue of the Shallot is on divergent.
Oh,
is
yes.
the theme. And I think all of us have a thread of divergence, but I do think that we often want to not be different, and yet that is actually what gives us the most color in life, right? Is all the divergence, all the change, and I think it starts when you're in, after kindergarten, because you kind of get a little bit freer reign, but then all of a sudden we do have sort of a herd mentality, and it takes some of the color out, doesn't it?
It does. And it's so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. It is okay to be different. That is truly the point, to be yourself, because trying to be someone else is way too difficult. Like, really, it's much easier to just be who you are. And it's much easier to explore who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. It's easier to explore than it is to conform. At least for me, anyway.
It's probably true for everyone.
I would hope so. I hope everyone gets to that point.
Right. Acceptance, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know you have a piece to share with us, a poem. And so I'm very excited for us to do that.
Thank you. I'm excited too. I awake, worrying that the ground cannot hold my weight, yet curious about who lives in my reflection and what awaits outside. What is it about my body that makes my soul yearn for another galaxy? And when will I find a home in these bones? The mirror reveals a furrowed brow. Dark circles form moon phases above heavy cheeks punctured by a smirk. Black coils spiral gray past my ears to shoulders upon which many stand but few acknowledge. Outside, the wind is resolute. The sun hides its face, birds rush from log to nest and back again, and the trees surrender to it all. Oh, to be rooted like they, to claw the earth and understand it, to brush the heavens and be humble. But I am just a dandelion, plucked and strewn to whet the appetite of the wishful, whimsical yet inconvenient, unyielding but delicate. When did the soil turn to cement, and what fruit can I bear here? If given the chance, I would smile. I'd be cloudless and gold. I'd sing at sunrise and laugh while being trampled underfoot. I'd talk about not fearing the squall and cyclone because, yes, the wind is resolute, but it's gravity you've got to reckon with. She's the one with bite and a vendetta, pulling and pushing the moon just to throw water ashore, shaking deserts and gurgling lava, bragging about swallowing light. She hides stars in her cheek and causes whole universes to fall at her feet. And I am just a dandelion. Little, but not insignificant. Both firmament and fallow fight for my attention. I am a menace, but not without merit. I scratch the earth and soften it. I tickle the sky and fill it. I enter the void and soothe it. Cut me and I breathe anyway. I stretch anyway. I plunge into the earth and root anyway. I turn smut into something worth tilling while getting cast aside for gentler, prettier, more submissive sprouts. But I be anyway. I have teeth and conviction. Pulling and pushing only propels me to purpose, cracking concrete and pouring nectar. I gloat about how light flows through me, how disaster birthed me. There are universes in my seed, yet I am still just a dandelion. Little, but not insignificant, perennial and prolific with moons in my cheek. I think gravity has to reckon with me.
You know, I don't know if someone read it, they would get half the meaning as from the spoken, from the way you really perform it. It's lovely. I mean,
Thank you.
I got so stuck on this idea of when your hair hit your shoulders, but then people standing on top. And there were another time where, the cement and what can grow in this, just, it was lovely. The imagery, so many different,
Thank you.
You'd have to, I guess I'll get to listen to it numerous times.
Thank you. Took me 2 years to write it, so I'm very,
you should be very proud.
I am. Thank you. I am.
Yeah. I think, when did you know you were done? Because 2 years is a long time and it's perfect. But when was that moment?
When I felt that the story was complete, when I could read it all the way through and I could just take a deep breath, or when I could read it and not be like, and it's just like I don't know how to describe it, but it's just this feeling of this peace. That's what it is. And for 2 years, I hadn't had peace when I came to the end of it. And so I just had to keep working and keep looking at, well, then what is missing? And I think what was missing was like the story of triumph and that juxtaposition between triumph and trauma.
Right.
I needed to talk about how, why am I waking up like this? Why am I waking up feeling so heavy, right? What what has happened to cause me to feel this way. So telling that whole story and then being able to say, but I am all of these things.
Right.
And so it just, peace. That's what I've been looking for.
Yeah. It was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A little